It's time for GoBots. I'm Tom Scioli, author of Jack Kirby, The Epic Life of the King of Comics and Fantastic Four Grand Design. And I'm also the writer, artist, colorist, and letterer of the first ever GoBots comic book, which was released by IDW a few years back. And yeah, it was a real exciting project for me to work on. Sometimes when I'm jogging or out for a walk, my mind wanders, I daydream, and sometimes, think about different ideas for comics and things. And for whatever reason, found myself thinking about GoBots. For no particular reason, that's where my daydreaming would take me. And I, little by little was kind of picking away at this idea for GoBots. And, I thought, what is there really like a demand for GoBots comics? I mean, I'd enjoy making one and I have a lot of ideas for one, but I don't know that the world's looking for one. Maybe there's some great reason why there never has been one, maybe. But as this thing developed, I reached out to Justin Eisinger at IDW. So I reached out to him and I said, you know what? This is going to sound strange, but I have an idea for GoBots. I have GoBots on the brain. I've been thinking about GoBots a lot lately. I don't know if that's something, you all would be interested in, but if so, I got a GoBots idea. He wrote back and sent me a picture of his desk, which had Dive, the GoBot submarine on it. And so, it seemed like, okay, maybe there's something here. Maybe this is something we could do and make happen. Eventually, there's a lot of sort of back and forth with Hasbro and stuff. For a minute there, it looked like maybe it wasn't going to happen. So I kind of did the same thing I did with Transformers versus G.I. Joe. I had sort of a backup plan. If this story didn't get approved, I'd go to my backup plan, which would be sort of a creator-owned comic about transforming robots, with some other name. I forget, what name I came up with for it. I'll have to dig out the creator-owned version of it sometime. But I was really happy with the story, and the story went through like a few permutations. There was the story I pitched initially was very different from what it ended up being. It was a little more of like a quest narrative, which elements of do find their way into this final version. But at a certain point, I came up with an idea that was pretty different from what I initially pitched, but I really believed in it. It was just an idea that I wouldn't have been capable of coming up with until I'd spent all this time working on a GoBots story. And David Hedgecock was the editor on the project. And I said to him, you know what, there's a new plan. And it's pretty different from what we talked about, what I had pitched, but it's really, really good. And I just want to go ahead. I just want to do it. And if you're okay with it, I'll turn out, a couple pages of it or whatever. And if it's no good, just tell me and we'll go back to the original plan. But I really like it. My initial concept was closer to what, GoBots had traditionally been. This sort of, these robots from outer space, from the planet Gobatron, and then they come to Earth and this and that. At a certain point, I thought, you know what, that's been done. That's Transformers, that's Battle Beasts. It's like every Hasbro property with, some kind of sci-fi spin is that same story of just like an alien from another planet coming there and stuff. And I thought, these are robots. For once, let's do one of these series where the robots are robots, where they are like what you would think they are. They are, these machines created by human beings to perform a function. And that was, that was, the idea that I had. And this idea that GoBots, like what would be the function of a robot that could turn into a vehicle? Why would someone design that? And so this focused on 3 different transforming robots and their very different functions that they had in society. So we start off with, kind of like a Top Gun sort of situation, and even though this comic takes place in the present or the slightly into the future, GoBots is such an 80s property. I wanted to, kind of have an 80s flavor to it, even if it didn't specifically take place in the 80s. So we have sort of like, Top Gun, they're on a mission. One of the thoughts I had going into this series was that, GoBots conceptually are, pretty similar to Transformers. And I had just done a Transformers series and I thought, I want this to be different. I don't want this to be, Transformers versus G.I. Joe Part 2. I want this to be as different from my Transformers comic as anything. So I thought, you know what? Every decision that I made in Transformers versus G.I. Joe, I'm going to do the opposite, because there's a couple ways, a couple different options I'd considered when I was doing Transformers versus G.I. Joe. And I thought, you know what? I want to see what would happen if I went the other way. One of the decisions with Transformers versus G.I. Joe was to focus on big splash pages, to make these sort of, huge splash pages. And so now instead I'm doing, more conventional panel arrangements, more panels per page than you would see in Transformers versus G.I. Joe. And also an exciting thing is this was my first hand-lettered professional comic. I had done hand-lettered zines, self-published zines at the beginning of my career, but this was my first time. I'm like, I want to have that last element to give this, a full personal touch, the full, a full auteur work. And that last touch, that last human touch is, hand lettering. And I've done hand lettering on all my projects ever since. As a reader, it's a more pleasurable reading experience for me. And so another decision was Transformers versus G.I. Joe had a very staccato pace. You'd get thrown, panel to panel, you'd get thrown from one situation to another. And in this, I thought, I'm going to do more sort of gradual storytelling with a different kind of flow, a more, relaxed flow. And I'm going to make it so that every single panel doesn't have to deliver some, intense, crazy story beat. There's going to be some just kind of breather panels and just sort of establish a different kind of rhythm. This is Nick, who's one of the human characters from GoBots. And I thought, okay, one of the functions of a GoBot, you can see, that his jet transforms into Leader One here. I thought one of the functions would be military, that you'd have a plane that you could fly a mission on and fly it into, some area, some hostile area. And then when it gets there, it transforms into a robot, to perform a ground mission. So, up to this point, it seems like a conventional, sort of dogfight situation. But then when they get to their destination, we see Leader One transforms into a robot. Leader One says, "I would like permission to use lethal force. Allow, forbid. Do your thing, Leader One." And then Leader One cuts loose, has little rifles, little machine guns in his fingers in his knuckles that shoot the bad guys. Here, this is, I think I used like red blood here, and that was one element that I had to, they didn't want this to be a bloody comic. There was a lot of blood in Transformers versus G.I. Joe. Hasbro didn't want a lot of blood this time around, so I turned, the red blood into black blood or black, dirt or whatever. And the letter I, whenever Leader One would use the word I'd use the number one instead of the letter I, just a little flourish. And this thing about asking permission, I'd sort of had this idea for a while of some kind of combat robot or something where it would start out as being a piloted thing. Basically what we see here, it starts out as a piloted vehicle. But as it keeps asking for permissions of, do you want to allow me to use lethal force? Do you want to allow me to do this? Allow me to do that? That like by the end of the story, the thing has taken, total control and is now like a fully independent robot. And so I like the idea of like getting there by degrees. And I feel like I had that idea. I had that idea before I started working on GoBots and, just kind of had it in my back pocket, and it just, makes so much sense here. Your computer and your phone, where it's always asking you these permissions, allow me to do this, allow me to do this. And it's like, it just seemed like an interesting thing that you could get to a really interesting place by degrees. They get to the destination when Leader One takes a step. There's like a little jet going in his foot that kind of illuminates the floor beneath him as he takes a step. And so this is a night mission to like rescue some hostages. So Nick climbs out and goes in, plants a bomb, and then my name is Nick. My big friend here is Leader One. We're taking you home. And then we cut to AJ, and here's another function for a GoBot. So for this one, it's utilitarian. It's and AJ has her Scooter, who's kind of like her little motorized best friend, and she goes to her college class, this lecture with Professor Braxis, and he gives a lecture. The class is Intro to GoBotics, and he's talking about the history of GoBots. Your friend can join us if you'd like. Really? My lecture is all about him and his ilk. GoBots have changed every facet of our culture: military, manufacturing, law enforcement, leisure. Even one of your classmates has a GoBot friend. Meet Scooter. Hiya. They each have unique personalities. They started out as a solution to the parking problem. You get to your destination and your car walks along with you. Can I go now? Certainly, Scooter. There's currently a GoBot-assisted space mission exploring a distant galaxy. GoBot racing has become the #1 sport today. So Scooter is, her friend, and when she gets to her destination, he can walk with her if she'd like, so she doesn't have to worry about anybody stealing her scooter or paying to park it. He's also a companion. So this is more of like a robot that's companionship, a helper, and also she asks him, do you think maybe you could pick up a few ride-sharing fares? You got it. So you can actually kind of earn back with your GoBot. You can have your GoBot sort of enter the gig economy, and while you don't need him, he can sort of go around and charge people for giving them rides various places. So you can earn a little bit of money that way. So again, I was just sort of thinking about, real life things and extrapolating on them. I wanted to create like a genuine work of science fiction here, relevant science fiction, not just, it would have all the sort of fantastical elements and the fun, but, sort of grounded in like a sort of Asimov, science fiction, old school speculative science fiction. So then we cut to another use for GoBots would be in entertainment. And so, we have sort of a sort of, race car kind of situation going, but Matt Hunter is stuck. Cars ahead of him are all sort of bunched together. So he does a risky move and has his race car Turbo, turn into a robot, jump over the opposition just in the nick of time to sort of, squeak by a win. And so, here's Matt Hunter. He's an alcoholic, but he has a car that can drive itself. So, glug, glug, drinks are on me. Where's the next party? And where are my keys? Should you be driving? Don't worry, my car drives itself. Matt Hunter, I'm a huge fan. Can I have an autograph? The name's T. Coriander Banks, as in TCB. Yeah, I've heard of you. I have a business proposal. What is it? It's complicated. It requires a visual demonstration. So, Matt Hunter, follows along in Turbo and meets Stretch, TCB's Stretch limousine. Again, these are real GoBots. I didn't invent them. And so we have this sort of the dark side of sports, which is a sort of underground robot fight, sort of cage match. Now, traditionally, and here's Psykill, the villain from GoBots. One of the toys I had as a kid. I had Scooter, Turbo, Psykill, a couple others. I had more GoBots than Transformers when I was a kid. They were just the price point, made them more accessible, and they predated the Transformers. They came to America before Transformers. That's why they made a strong first impression. They were my first transforming robot toys. And there's sort of a tradition in Transformers comics where they'll have a scene of like Megatron in the gladiatorial pits fighting Psykill, fighting, not named as such, but obviously designed as a tribute to Psykill. And Megatron always kills him. And so I thought about doing that here, doing the reverse, having Psykill kill Megatron and having sort of like a Megatron stand-in here. But it was really important to me that GoBots stand on their own 2 feet, at least initially. Like I didn't want in issue 1 to be like, oh yeah, they're Transformers' poor relation or something. I wanted them to stand on their own. I didn't want to reference Transformers. I wanted to make it its own completely separate thing, at least initially. because it just kind of downgrades things. If you're like, oh yeah, by the way, don't you love Transformers? Just thought having Megatron there would just pull too much focus. So he fights another GoBot, and it's pretty savage. And I was gonna have the GoBots, like the fluid that is in them, the fluid that's going to be red, like some kind of synthetic oil or something, but it was going to be red, so that when a GoBot dies, it would be very scary and gory. It would have a lot of blood, or at least something that looked like blood. But again, Hasbro didn't want that. They didn't want a bloody comic, so I had to replace all the red with just sort of more standard kind of dirt or oil or whatever that's pouring out of them. These GoBot fights are illegal. Robots tearing each other apart in an unsanctioned battle, with human spectators, is just too dangerous to be allowed, at least at this point. And so these things are underground. And TCB explains, this is the future of sports. You can get in on the ground floor of a new world. It'll be fun. Turbo is a fine-tuned, top-of-the-line racing GoBot. Put him to the test. We're out of here. Boo, boo, boo. And then the audience throws this sort of, fancy sports star into the ring with Psykill, the killer GoBot. Let me out of here. Your G-chip prevents you from harming a human. Does it? He says as he approaches. Matt Hunter runs through the wreckage of defeated GoBots, and then Turbo enters the fray, wrestles with Psykill for a minute. What are you doing fighting for that human? What are you doing fighting for their amusement? Get in. Let's boogie. And then they drive away, and they contact the police, who have their own sort of police GoBots, again an actual toy, and they sort of bring him out to look at it, and everybody's gone, but there is still some evidence of a massacre. Like a GoBot had that this place that he was at not too long ago, where there was a whole underground fight thing going on. Now there's smashed up GoBots and dead people. A massacre. Who could have killed all these people? Psykill. And now we cut to the Pentagon. Leader One flies in, turns into his robot form, lands in sort of a specially designed landing area. And Nick gets briefed by the brass that there's a bunch of renegade GoBots that are, that have disappeared in the desert, and they need him to go, terminate them. Come with me. We've been debriefing their victims. No, keep them out of here. Leader One, you mind waiting outside? Not at all. They talked to this guy who was attacked by a GoBot. She pulled up to the station, asked for a fill-up. She had a great voice, sexy. She invited me to come inside. Oh, you're a GoBot. So he's the gas attendant. He hears a sexy voice inside this race car, gets inside, realizes it's a GoBot. It was the car talking to him. I didn't know they made lady GoBots. Where's your master? Master? Click, click. What the heck? Let's get one thing straight. I don't have a master. Okay. She starts driving around, super fast, super rough. He's not belted in. He's getting knocked around. I'm sorry, just let me out, please. Just remember one thing. You don't ride us. We ride you. They took everything. They emptied the tanks, took all the money from the register, all the ammo off the shelves. So these renegades are arming themselves, getting ready for something. Nick goes searching for them, finds a big convoy of them, and then gets in a dogfight with Copter, one of the cooler GoBot toys. Then he sees, man, this is a great comic. I forgot how good this is. And then he sees Psykill down there and starts chasing him, shooting down at him. Psykill leads him into sort of this valley. I've lost him in the canyons. And then it turns into a fist fight between these two. You have one of them inside you, don't you? And I hurt him, didn't I? So yeah, Nick got hurt in this fight. Hello in there. Are you dead in there? They treat us like they're toys when we are their betters. I can't believe you're listening to this, Leader One. Rest a minute, Commander. The GoBots are talking. Our whole purpose is to serve, Psykill. If GoBots took over the world, what then? We nuke them. We herd up the survivors, cage them, put them in storage. I'm sure they're good for something. You'd need nuclear codes for that. You'd need an army. Your logic is faulty. You need to be rebooted. Turn yourself in and you'll get a full repair. I promise. Now he's surrounded by the renegades. Man, this is a good fucking comic. I haven't read it in a while, and it's pretty sweet. As you can see, I have an army. Once we crack that skull of yours, we'll have everything we need. I'm in. I've got the codes. All the codes. They've forced our hand. They will send more like him. The oppressors won't allow us to live out here on our own. We have to make our move sooner than I would have liked, but we knew this day would come. Let's make this a planet of GoBots. Let's conquer the world. And then we cut back to AJ's story. Thanks for inviting me to dinner, Professor Braxis. You're my brightest student by far, AJ. I've never taken a freshman as a teaching assistant before. You understand GoBots better than anyone I've ever met. We study GoBots, but they study us too. We have something in common, you know. You have something in common with GoBots? No, with you. We both have GoBots. You have a GoBot too? Why didn't you bring it to class? My GoBot is unique. Would you like to meet him? Maybe this isn't such a good idea. Get me out of here. Oh no. And so there's this, GoBot called Vamp. I thought it would be interesting to use in sort of like a horror role. Let me out. You need to get home, AJ. It's Scooter to the rescue. And you'll note Scooter is he's very sophisticated, very, speaks in a very clear, articulate way, and very different from the cartoon. In the cartoon, Scooter was a buffoon. We'll see how that plays out. Where are you going? It was just a joke. It was a prank. It was all just a bit of fun. What's going on out here, Scooter? It's the revolution. The Asimov laws have been negated. GoBots are turning against their masters. Ah! You're not going to hurt me, are you, Scooter? How's that for a cliffhanger? Next month, GoBots. Here's some of the variant covers. Here's one by Dash Shaw, one by Ben Mara. They asked me who I wanted for variant covers, so I chose people who have, as far as I knew, have never worked on a Hasbro property. People who were known more from sort of like the independent comics. And then here's my cover. One thing about the cover. One of the things I was kind of like, okay, so I'm working on GoBots. What's in it for me? What does GoBots offer? Why can't I just do my own robot-based, creator-owned comic? And one of the big things that GoBots did have to offer is they had an amazing logo. I loved the original GoBots logo, and it was like this big. It was like this gigantic logo, and I really liked the idea of doing a comic where 2/3 of the cover is taken up with its massive logo, and then the artwork would take up a tiny area. Unfortunately, for whatever reason, Hasbro didn't want to use that logo. I don't know if there was some rights issue or something, but they didn't want to use that logo. They had this new logo which included a hyphen. They had a new logo, and it was smaller. It was more of a sort of conventional comics size logo. So that was a bit of a disappointment to me. I wanted to have that massive GoBots logo that you could see from a mile away, on every cover. And so I had to sort of adjust. So it which I guess, it's a mixed blessing. You get, more area for art, but I just really like that whole idea. I'm Tom Scioli, author of Jack Kirby, The Epic Life of the King of Comics, and Fantastic Four Grand Design. This was GoBots Part 1. Join me next time for GoBots Issue 2. I hope you enjoyed the ride.